Good evening, prospective students of the class of 2020. We're so excited to meet you and to introduce you to Princeton during this month of April, as it's formerly known as Princeton Preview. And tonight we're kicking it off with a student panel of students across living and natural sciences, psychology, also included there is a neuroscience certificate, and a student who is concentrating in mathematics. So we will spend the next 30 to 45 minutes talking about these specific tracks of academics. So please, on the right-hand side, pose your questions in the Q&A app, and we'll stick around for, again, as I said, about 45 minutes and take your questions. But before we start with introductions, I should start with myself. I am Mary Buckley, and I'm Senior Assistant Dean here in the Office of Undergraduate Admission. I'd like to say a big congratulations to you all. We're so excited for you, and we can't wait to hopefully meet you at one of our 2 Princeton Preview programs. So with that, I will turn it over to, why don't we start with you, Sean? Sean, if you could introduce yourself, say where you're from, and of course your major choice.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm a senior in Princeton. I'm the class of 2016. I'm from Singapore. I'm an international student here in America, and my concentration is mathematics. I'm also doing certificates in computer science and statistics and machine learning.
Thank you. How about Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm also a senior. I'm from Pasadena, California, and I'm concentrating in chemistry. I was pre-med while I was here, so if you have questions about that too, you can ask me about that.
That's great. And you, Jaleisha, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, hi, I'm Jaleisha, and I'm a senior in the psychology department, and my minor right now, I'm getting a certificate in neuroscience, and I'm from Dover, Delaware.
Okay, and last but not least, Bernardo.
So yes, my name is Bernardo. I'm a junior in the Department of Molecular Biology, or as we call it here, MoBio. I'm also getting a certificate in French, and I study art history on the side, so some differences. And like Michelle, I'm also pre-med, so I can answer questions about that as well.
Great. Thank you all very much. And of course, as you can imagine, these students are all involved in things outside the classroom, which we'll certainly, if we have some time, we can get to a little bit later. But without further ado, I see a lot of questions coming in. Again, if you're just joining us, submit your questions on the right-hand side, and you, along with maybe your future classmates, can upvote the questions, and we will select as we go along. So why don't we get underway? How about, let's see, what about this one here? So this one's from, where'd that go? It jumped around. Michael, what are some of the similarities and differences between psychology major and the neuroscience major? So Jaleisha, I think this one's for you.
Yeah, I was thinking that question would come up. So I did a little researching because there's been a lot of change. The neuroscience concentration is actually new. So I'm just doing the certificate, but actually majoring in it is something new here. I would say that with the neuroscience major, you take a lot of classes that are more focused in physics and math and coast. Those are some of the requirements for the actual major. Where for psychology, you don't need that background as much, that science background, and it's more just psychology focused. So you take like cognitive psychology and social psychology. So I would say that's the biggest difference, where neuroscience is more computational, where psychology is not.
Great, thank you. And if you have a chance, if you do come to preview, students, be sure to check out our brand new psychology and neuroscience building. It's Parrott Smith Scully Hall. It's state of the art. It's beautiful. We also, if you don't happen to make it to campus, we have a beautiful image of it on our virtual tour on our home website. So a lot of ways to see the architecture and the facilities within. Alrighty, so how about this one here? It's getting a lot of upvotes. It's from Brandon. What experience do any of you have in research opportunities abroad? So we always like to think about Princeton beyond the gates of or front gates of NASA on Nassau Street. So why don't one of you, if you have the research opportunities abroad, maybe could dip into this question and provide some insight?
So like I said, my name is Bernardo. I'm a junior in the MOL department, and I've actually been abroad for the past 2 summers, and I will be abroad again this summer doing research. And there are so many opportunities at Princeton to go abroad and to also go abroad and do research. So there are many organizations on campus that facilitate these kinds of internships and opportunities. So last year I spent 2 months in Marseille, which is in the south of France, doing pediatric and clinical research. And then this summer I will be in Oxford doing more lab developmental research. And like I said, there are a variety of campuses, of offices and organizations on campus that set up these internships for you. So we have the Office of International Programs, International Internship Placements, PICS, which is Princeton's Internship in Civic Service. And so there are a lot of ways to get involved in research, specifically research abroad. And you can also, if you do find your own internship abroad, you can apply for funding. So there are many ways that Princeton will help you go abroad and do the research you want to do, no matter what area of research you want to do it. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Bernardo. Anyone else have anything to weigh in before we take the next question? Okay. Well, this one, wow, this one has 9 upvotes, so we'll show this. Do you see this one coming to our math concentrator? This one's from Samir. How difficult do you find the mathematics courses as compared to your high school courses? Was it much more difficult to perform well? So if you could provide some insight into your path here at Princeton.
Okay, so I did my high school in Singapore, so my high school courses were tailored for the A levels. So it might be a different system if you're doing APs or other high school certificates. So as to math courses here, so there's 3 different tracks when you start in freshman year. So there's the Math 215, 217 track for math majors, where it's a rigorous proof-based math that you probably did not see in high school, even if you did math competitions. And then there's the Math 201, 202 track, which is basically introduction to multivariable calculus, linear algebra. And then there's the Math 203, 204 track, which covers the same stuff, but is somewhat more proof-based than 201. So among them, I took 215, 217. That was 4 years ago, because I came into Princeton intending to be a physics or astrophysics major, but I didn't do that. So I did that. That is definitely the hardest math class, hardest entry-level math class there is at Princeton, and it's quite, in a sense, abstract already. And then, but for if you're not intending to major in mathematics, then you can start with Math 201 or 203, which covers multivariable calculus. And as how hard, for me, it was a lot harder than what I did in high school, because I was not formally introduced to proof-based math. Was it more difficult to perform well? I would say that because for me, 215, there was about half the people who were introduced to proof-based math, and about half the class was not. And basically, if you're in the other half, then it's slightly harder for you to. It's a harder job to catch up. But it is not extremely difficult to perform well. It is. I mean, it is definitely difficult. The math classes are challenging here, but I wouldn't say it's difficult to perform well. Yeah, I would say that. I think the rest can comment on the other entry-level math classes.
Yeah, sure. I took 201 and 202 freshman year, and yeah, I mean, also there is, if you're not looking to go into a super math major, there is also like regular calculus, like 103, 104. But yeah, I took 201, 202, having taken AP Calc, AB, and BC in high school. And I do think there is an adjustment, and it is more difficult, not necessarily to do well in the class in terms of the grading, but just in terms of Princeton grades on a curve. And for me, that was something I wasn't used to in high school. So the tests are kind of written to be challenging, and I think you end up learning better that way, but for me that was something I had to adjust to from high school. But you can come out of a test, and at least for me in high school, you're used to getting 100% to get an A, but you can come out of a test with an 80, and that can still end up being an A. But there's just that adjustment for me, but I think it's still doable. And for like the pre-med stuff and for chemistry, the 201, 202 level are basically what they kind of recommend you have for chemistry.
Okay, thank you. That was a really good insight. And with that, on campus, there's also a lot of resources for students in the residential colleges, should they wish a peer advisor or maybe a faculty advisor to strengthen their understanding within the course. We also have the McGraw Center for Teaching and Learning, which is a great hub for students who are looking for assistance outside of the classroom. So let's see. Oh, I love this question. Which classes were most influential in helping you decide on a major? And this one comes from John. So who wants to take that?
I guess I can talk a little bit. I did already sort of know what I wanted to take whenever I came into Princeton. I knew I wanted to be a psychology major, but my freshman year I did take courses in a lot of different areas, and that really sort of either solidified my choice in psychology, but it also showed me that there are a lot of great options here. So I know I took a class in Spanish, and I found out that I really liked Spanish here on campus and decided to take that for another semester. I also took a class in African American Studies, and that was very interesting. And then I also took some math courses. So it was very interesting to sort of see that even though I knew what my major wanted to be, I found that if I really wanted to pursue something different, it would have been easy for me to switch to a different major.
I can also kind of comment on this. So I came in also kind of knowing that I wanted to do something biology or science related, just because when I first took bio in high school, I thought it was really cool and amazing. That's what I wanted to keep going with. And so I came in freshman year with the idea that I was going to major in molecular biology, but I started taking classes in French and art history, and I was like, this is really cool. And then sophomore year, so if you're not an engineer, you declare your major in the spring of your sophomore year. And pretty much out of nowhere, out of the blue, I was just like, you know what, I want to major in French with a focus in art history, and so I kind of put bio aside. And then it was it was in a specific class, but it was during a research internship that I had that summer that I realized that the biology classes that I had been taking, specifically things like biochemistry and microbiology, were what I really wanted, like were my passion. So it was kind of that thing where, that saying, you don't know what you have until you lose it. And I kind of thought that after having declared French, I realized how much I did enjoy my courses in biology, and so I kind of switched back, thinking that that's what I wanted to do, my independent work, my thesis, and just elaborate on the material that I had covered in my bio classes. So there's a lot of room for flexibility to try new things and to, who knows, maybe switch paths and then maybe switch back like I did.
That's great. I think that defines the beauty of the liberal arts education and the freedom we give you to explore across disciplines in your first, if not first year, 2 years here at Princeton. Does anyone else want to add to that question before we take on another one? I think it's applicable probably to all of you, so if you have something to add, please do.
Yeah, I guess just along similar lines, I also kind of knew I wanted to do something in the sciences, but I was between bio and chem for a while. And for me, just like I took organic chem my sophomore year, like not every, but most pre-med students do, and I just really like the problem solving aspect of it and the way it's taught here. It's open note, and that's not necessarily common at all schools. And I really enjoyed the kind of critical thinking aspects of it, and that's basically what led me to be a chem major. But also reiterating the point of flexibility, I also like that the chemistry department was really flexible. I've gotten to take some neuroscience classes, some visual arts classes, and things outside my major that I'm also really interested in. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you all. So how about this one? It's a little bit, between academics and extracurricular life. I think it's a fun one to show what you guys are up to day to day. What is the typical routine for a student at Princeton. I don't know if any 2 days are alike, but maybe if you guys could just talk about your own day in the life.
Sure, I'll go. I am on the varsity basketball team, or I was. But so my day would typically involve a couple times a week a morning lift, but just a couple times a week. And then classes, I think the earliest you can have classes like 8:30, but you can definitely schedule it so that you don't have class until 10 or whatever, most semesters if you want. It really ranges for me. Like right now I'm in 3 classes and doing my thesis, so I only have class really on Monday and Wednesday and like 1 on Friday. My Tuesday and Thursday are basically free, and that's good because then I can go into lab on those days. But you would have class during the day. If you're an athlete, all your practices are between 4:30 and 7:30, which there's no class during that time, so sports practice does not conflict with academics, which is something I think Princeton does exceptionally well, and that is definitely not the case at other schools. And then 7:30, there's some night classes. I've had a couple art classes during my time here at that time. There's some seminar type things, but usually classes like kind of done by the 4:20 period. If you have a lab-based class, which most of like the intro sciences have a lab, that's usually from like 1:30 to 4:20 once a week. And then, I don't know, for me, I like to usually study at night, like after getting dinner. And yeah, that's pretty much me. I'm in one of our eating clubs, which is a thing for upperclassmen to eat your meals, and it's kind of a social scene. So that's where I'm in Cannon. That's where I would usually eat my meals with my friends and teammates. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say my day is somewhat similar, minus the practices for sports. But since I'm not an athlete, I typically have class around 9 or 10 o'clock, and then classes, as Michelle was saying, end around 4:30. And then if you have a job on campus, you would either have time to work that job after 4:30, or if you don't have class for a certain day, you might decide to schedule your hours for that time. And then I'm actually in a dance group on campus, so I'm in the Princeton High Steppers. We're a step group, and so we actually have rehearsals normally at night, and so it's between 7 p.m. to 1 a.m., any like 2-hour block there. So you never know what your schedule is going to be until the actual semester starts, but then you sort of plan your homework around whenever your dance rehearsals are and things. So.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway is that your routine is going to change just based on who you are and like what activities you have and what activities and what classes you have that semester. Freshman year, for example, I had 8:30 and 9 a.m. classes every day, and then sophomore spring, my earliest class every week was only at 1:30. I mean, every day was only at 1:30, and so you really kind of build your schedule and your day-to-day activities based on what you have that semester, based on what commitments you have. So if you're on a sports team or a dance group or have an on-campus job, that'll affect your daily routine. So it varies a lot from person to person, just depending on what kind of classes you're in and what activities you have going on.
Thanks, guys. I think that was a great introduction in terms of the variety of things that you can be involved in at Princeton outside of the classroom as well. So you certainly all have pretty packed schedules there. So I'm going to take this one question second from the top, and then we'll get a little bit into post-grad life as the question above it asked. But this one is sort of in line with one we asked earlier. Are intro classes fairly big in general, and specifically maybe the science classes? So if you guys or one of you take this question and talk maybe a little bit about your class sizes, not only your freshman and sophomore year, but junior and senior as well.
So I'll take this one because I've taken quite a few science classes. So your intro science classes that you'll take maybe your freshman and maybe sophomore year as well, like general chemistry, organic chemistry, intro biology, intro neuroscience. Those are going to be pretty big classes. And also like things like intro to economics, microeconomics. So these popular introductory classes are going to be pretty big. I think organic chemistry in the fall has around like 200 or so students. Same for general chemistry and these introductory level courses. So you have lecture at that size, maybe twice a week. But what's great about the lectures here at Princeton, other classes as well, is that along with those two larger lectures, you have these precepts, which are kind of like specified classroom time. So although you have a 200-person lecture, you will meet in precept with a preceptor, which is either someone in the graduate department there or even the professor in some cases, but you meet like with only 15 people a week. So you have your two lectures, and then you have lab or you have a precept. So you have this kind of one-on-one time with your preceptor or your professor. And so it's very easy to have this learning in a smaller setting, and during precepts is when you usually go over practice exams or problems or more critical thinking approaches to the problems. And office hours are always a great way to interact with your professors, even in these larger 200-person classes, because they really want to get to know you, and they want you to go to office hours. And so I would definitely say that that's one of the great things about the classes here, even with these two lectures. After the intro courses, for example, though, you do start getting into smaller classes like seminars. So I've taken courses where it was like only 15 people. So a lot of biology courses, like seminars, I've taken neuroimmunology, virology, and these are all smaller classes. So my neuroimmunology class was a seminar, and it was directly with the professor who has the lab here, Dr. Lisa Boulanger, and it was 3 hours a week, and it was just great to have that it was a kind of a smaller class, so have more attention. So the intro classes tend to be bigger, but you still have that one-on-one time with your professors in precepts and office hours. And as you go on to the higher level classes, you have a lot of smaller seminars and have more one-on-one time. So yeah.
Thanks, Bernardo. Does anyone else have anything to add? Though, Bernardo, I think you really provided a good insight into the class sizes at the university. But anyone else, feel free to chime in. If not, we will take our next question. So this one is sort of tied to what we were speaking to earlier as well, and I think it's a nice one to talk a little bit about learning across disciplines, thinking across disciplines, how you incorporate the liberal arts into your education. So it's a nice question, and sort of think and talk about the classes you may have taken outside of your major choice. So the question comes from Casimir, and it's, how did you feel the general education requirements impacted the classes you wanted to take for your major? Did they result in you being able to take less classes within your interests? So you could also talk about maybe the breakdown within the major and credit requirements.
I'll go. So for me, definitely not. I believe general education requirements are the distribution requirements, if that's what you're referring to. So you have, for me, I'm an AB. There's the engineering one, which they have a different set of distribution requirements. For me, you have to take like 2 social analysis, 2 history classes, 2 language and the arts, and like EM, which is like ethics and morality and stuff like that. So it definitely does not result me being able to take fewer classes in mathematics, because for mathematics, if I had to graduate with a mathematics major, I only need technically like 5 math classes, 5 upper level math classes, and 3 other classes with mathematical content, like which they call cognates in mathematics. So that's only 8 classes, and which means you can, if you take 4 classes a semester, you only need, if you take 2 of these things a semester, you only need 4 semesters to finish, which gives you basically junior year and senior year to finish all your major requirements. And for AB, you're expected to take 31 classes in total. So you have basically like easily 20 classes in which you can take whatever you want within your interests. They need not be mathematics. For example, I took a lot of classes in computer science. I took a lot of classes in ORF, which is operations research and financial engineering, which are things like statistics, modeling, probability, which are not in the math department per se. For general education requirements, if you sum them up, there are not that many. Because I'm a math major, so I'm gonna finish like QR, which is quantitative reasoning, immediately, because most of the math classes are QR anyways. So I only need to take, I believe, like 6 or 7 classes that ranges from history to music. I took a music class. I took an astronomy class, a lab class, and for the science majors, a lot of the introductory science classes are lab-based, which is the STL requirement and things like that. So factoring that in, the additional classes you have to take for distribution requirements are not that many, and you have plenty of time for classes within your interests. Yes.
That was great. Thank you, Sean. Good details there. So how about this one? I think it's a really great question, talking about your relationships with your professors. So do you find you're able to develop a relationship with your professor even in large intro classes? So if you guys could talk about advising and mentoring, maybe this is a way to tie in your thesis work and your thesis mentor.
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about that. So I would say that in larger classes, it's really up to you if you want a tight relationship with your professor. I think that's where going to office hours and really seeking out that relationship with your professor is important, because there may be 200 people in the class, and so the professor can't come to each one of you, but if you come to them, I think they would be very receptive. But I think in smaller seminars, my thesis advisor right now taught one of my classes that had about 30 people in it, and I went up to her and wanted to talk to her about her research and ended up getting something together where we could work together for my thesis. And so I would say that it is easy to get a relationship with your professor, but you do sometimes have to take the initiative. They're not going to come and find you.
Anyone have anything else to add?
I would agree with that. My advisor for my JP, or junior paper, was Professor Stemmelhack, who teaches organic chemistry. And I didn't really have a personal relationship with him while I was taking the class, because it is a large class and because I chose not to necessarily seek that out. But I definitely think he would have been receptive if he did go to office hours and everything. But for chemistry, how it works is they have a seminar during the first semester of your junior year where different professors come and present their research to you. And you're definitely at that point encouraged to contact anybody who you want to meet with. They're all really happy to meet with you. I had a couple of one-on-one meetings with him. He was great, and ended up doing my research with him. And so while it was definitely involving things I had learned about in his organic chemistry class, I definitely kind of developed my relationship with him later. But I do think it, like Delisha said, it is more kind of up to you in terms of you have to take the initiative.
Okay, thank you. I think this one actually also will go back to you. Let's see here, Bernardo. Where did that question go? It's about biology. If you have any insight as well into the EEB, Ecology and Evolutionary Biology program, so between molecular biology and ecology and evolutionary biology, Jocelyn asked, would you please elaborate on the differences between the two, and how much overlap is there? How do people interested in biology choose one?
So I think that there are some clear differences, and it is a choice that I know. I have a lot of friends, especially during our sophomore year, which is when we declared our majors, who had to choose between EEB and then molecular biology. And very I think the stark differences are that one, EEB it takes a much more literally, it's just a more ecological evolutionary approach. So where you're taking classes on ecology, species interactions, human evolution, and those types of things. In molecular biology, it's more molecular, it's more mechanistic, so I think you're taking things like immunology, genetics, virology, biochemistry. A good comparison that I like to make is that there's an immunology class in the EB department is called Immune Systems and Populations. So it looks at how it studies it's immunology, but from a population standpoint. So how immunology affects populations and evolution and development, whereas the immunology class in molecular biology is much more like antibodies, cell-mediated receptors, and those kind of like nitty-gritty details. So there are some stark contrasts, but I do have friends who want to do things more like epidemiology, parasitology, more kind of disease pathogens with that molecular biological approach, but who do it in the EB department. And ultimately, I mean, you have a long time to experiment with different classes and ultimately choose. But I think what really makes a difference is, one, the classes you end up taking and the relationships you end up making with the professors, and ultimately what you want to work with during your independent work in your junior year and senior year. And so you kind of go wherever your interests lie and wherever the professors you want to work with lie. So I hope that's always an ongoing concern with many freshmen and sophomores, even here.
Great, Bernardo. Thanks very much. So this one has come through, and I think it's a great one to answer. How collaborative are the science classes? Do students mainly work together or independently on problem sets and studying? Who wants to take this one?
I just want to take this one. I know I just spoke, but I just want to take this one because this is very applicable to my life. So in high school, I just preferred to work and study alone, just because I thought there were less distractions and it was easier. And even here now, I still prefer to study alone, just because like I feel like I need time to learn and master the material myself before kind of bouncing ideas off others. But it is very helpful. I find that once I get the material on my own to like talk about it with others. But in terms of problem sets, especially with like science classes, I don't know about Michelle's experience with organic chemistry, but working with a study group was very helpful for me. I'm in genetics right now, which is probably the toughest course in my department that I've taken so far. And everyone in that course, I think there are 52 of us. 52 of us. Everyone is in a study group because it's one of those classes where the problem sets, like your homework assignments, really does require you to think critically and share ideas and bounce ideas off one another and kind of learn from each other. And so it is a very important part, I think, of some of the science classes. In other science classes, maybe like biochemistry, I just prefer to do my problem sets on my own. But I know for things like chemistry, math P-sets, physics P-sets, I know a lot of friends who relied on study groups, and like myself, I thought they were very helpful. One, in just like getting the assignment done, but also kind of learning along the way from my peers. So, yeah.
Thanks, Bernardo. That's great. So this one here has come through. I think we'll take a few more questions. We are at 7:35, so been on there for a little while. So we'll take a few more, and this one is how valuable do you find the certificate programs? Did you ever feel limited by the ability to double major at Princeton? And just before we get into this, I will mention that we actually don't have double majors at the university, and one reason for that is because of the senior research that all students participate in, the independent research project known as the senior thesis. So, but if one of you guys want to talk about certificate programs and what other activities and academic activities you're involved in beyond your major.
All right, I'll take this. So this is really rare for Princeton students. I'm actually pursuing 3 certificates aside from my major, which is mathematics. So I'm doing applications of computer science, which is computer science, statistics and machine learning, which is I'm focused on the machine learning parts, and German. So it's actually very hard to structure classes because every certificate requires 4 relatively high-level classes in that department. So for me, I took in total about 7 computer science classes for the 2 certificates, and a few German classes as well. So German requires 4 German classes, and every certificate also requires a substantial paper or independent work. That means if I do 3 certificates, I have to do like 3 independent works, which are separate from, which may be separate they're not separate from, in my case, but they may be separate from your junior paper or senior thesis. So that's actually very hard. I might, because I have not, I'm a senior spring, so this is my last semester here. I'm still fulfilling some requirements for these certificates, and I might just drop one if it doesn't happen, you know. And so certificates, basically you can do as many and as few as you want, and I definitely do not recommend going into freshman year thinking that I want to do all these things. So freshman year should be just exploring things that you're interested in and not being too focused on your certificates. That said, it would be good if you like roughly knew what the requirements for a certificate is. Usually it's 4 high-level classes and 1 substantial independent work for a certificate. So definitely I feel that I'm not limited by the inability to double major, because had I double majored, I would basically major in math and computer science, which is basically what I'm doing right now, because I took in total about 9 math classes in the math department and maybe 9 or 10 in the CS department in total. The breadth of content you come into contact with, it's the same had you done a double major. A certificate is a significant, basically it represents a significant interest and effort in that area, and it's definitely valuable because it will be on your transcript, and it just demonstrates that you have basically proficiency in whatever that you're doing. So yeah, I'm a rare case in taking that many. Most of my friends do 1 major and 1 certificate, or 1 major and 2 certificates. Yeah.
Thanks, Sean. That was a great response, offering great insight into the certificate programs. I don't know if anyone else wants to add maybe a little more insight into their certificate program and how it matched up with their major choice or their concentration.
Yeah, I definitely can. So with psychology and neuroscience, it was very easy to fulfill the requirements for the neuroscience certificate, just because with my certificate, a lot of the classes were also cross-listed, which means it counts as both a psychology class and a neuroscience class. And so that really left me a lot of room to take all of my other distribution requirements and things like that while I was also pursuing my certificate. And so I also started out in the teacher preparation program, which means I would get a teaching certificate. And although I'm not in that certificate anymore, I was able to take a lot of the teaching courses since my other certificate was overlapping with my major. And so I would say the certificates are pretty, if they're lined up with what your major is, it's very easy to get them if classes are cross-listed, but there's also a lot of flexibility with you being able to get a certificate that's completely different from what your major is.
Cool. Thanks very much. Okay, I haven't forgotten about you, Jack, over here that's been upvoted 6 times. What is it like in terms of advising and applications for graduate schools in the sciences? And I think we'll take this question and then maybe one more before we say goodnight to our seniors here who do need to get back to their theses. So who wants to take this question?
I could take this question as well. So I did apply for graduate school in psychology, and I'll be studying for a PhD. I'll be going for a PhD in the fall in psychology. And so I would say that there are a lot of resources, but sometimes you do have to seek them out for yourself again. So I went to a lot of my professors and asked for their input because, of course, they all had to go for graduate degrees. And then there's also career services here. And so at career services, you can get people to look over your resume. They help you sort of send out your reference letters that you may need to send out to your different schools and things. So there's a lot of advice there. And so I found it to be really helpful when I was applying.
Yeah, I can say something for med school. We have a health professions advising office, and they will help you kind of put together your whole application. And the thing I think that's really great about Princeton is at least I found that you get really, really good relationships with your mentors, and therefore you have a really strong base when you're asking for recommendation letters. Whoever your like JP and thesis advisors, usually always a great person. For me, I have my basketball coach, and I think and other science professors. I actually even had like an art teacher write a letter for something too. So I think really those relationships that you form at Princeton make your enable you to really have a strong application for med school or for whatever grad school.
Thank you, both Jaleesha and Michelle. So this question's come through and it's been upvoted a few times, and I think it's a great note to end on. So if you guys could say, what has your favorite class been within your concentration and why?
I'll go. So my favorite class in mathematics would be, I would say, complex analysis, because the professor who taught it is Professor Elias Stein. He basically wrote a series of books which forms the Princeton's analysis sequence, which you will use here if you take analysis classes here. And the subject content is very beautiful in the sense that it's complete and the insights are very, how do I put it? It's like I think I had, the beauty of that area moved me in some ways that mathematics does somehow. And also the lecture is very, very good. Professor Stein is 82 or 83 years old this year, and he still is very energetic and comes to class and does a great job. And I took two analysis classes with him, so complex and Fourier analysis, and it's been a great experience. So I would say that favorite classes usually is a combination of the subject they're interested in and the lecturer being a really great, a teacher who lectures really, really well. And that's, I think, two really good two factors that makes a class memorable. Yeah.
So my favorite class, I'm gonna answer your question, but then talk about my actual favorite class. So my favorite class in my concentration was virology, which I took last semester in the Department of Molecular Biology, and it's just an incredible class. Like he was saying, the professor was just a great guy, super nice. Lynn Inquist, incredible researcher, and it was just a wonderful class because I find viruses to be just extraordinary and incredible, and that's the topic of my junior independent work and then leading into my thesis. They're just great. But my favorite class overall that was actually not in my concentration, I took this past semester as well, and it was called Bodies of Knowledge. And as I mentioned before, I'm also interested in art history, and this class was looking at Renaissance art, but the impact of anatomy and scientific innovations in that time during the Renaissance and how that impacted art. And so it was a seminar with 15 people. The professor, Susanna Berger, was incredible and so much fun. I still talk to her now. I went to office hours all the time. Great relationship with her, and it was just an incredible class just to see how art history and science, anatomy, and biology, which seem like two separate fields, can just combine and make this incredible class. So now I look at Renaissance art and I think of dissections and this and these scientific advancements really influence the thinking and the art and what we see now. So just a great way to bridge these two very different subjects into one great class.
Yeah, and I would say my favorite class would be Memory and Cognition, which I took this past fall with Professor Ken Norman. And so that class was really interesting just because we focused on what the brain does whenever it tries to remember, what happens whenever we forget. And so the class was very interactive, and so our homework assignments were to give our friends lists of words to remember and then see which ones they forgot, and then sort of based on what we learned in class, figure out why did they forget those ones, what makes that word more memorable than a different one. And so it was just a really interesting take on how we remember things, how we forget things, and sort of learning the psychology and neuroscience behind it was great because that class was actually cross-listed. So I got psychology and neuroscience credit for that, and it was amazing.
And yeah, I guess my favorite chem course was Chem 440, which is drug discovery. It's taught by Paul Ryder, who has spent dozens of years working in the pharma industry. So it was really neat to be taught by him because you can just tell he's been there and he's had these experiences in the real world, and you can really see the applications of the things that you're learning. So you see how these drugs were developed. And I was actually taking advanced organic chem at the same time, which he also helped teach. So I'd get to see kind of the real chemical aspects of how the drug was made, and then more like pharmacology, and almost kind of a little bit of like the business side of that in the drug discovery class. And it was just really neat to see how everything that you're learning can really impact things like malaria, HIV, etc. Across the world.
Thanks, everyone. All of those classes sound so fascinating, and if you do, prospective students, join us for one of our 2 Princeton previews, you might have the opportunity to actually sit in on one of these favorite classes, as these panelists have described them. That's our evening with you and talking about the sciences and psychology and mathematics. Please do, if you have any further questions, follow up with us at uaoffice@princeton.edu. You can also post questions to the event page here on Google+. Of course, we'd love to see you on social media, Princeton 2020 hashtag, or hashtag Princeton Preview, when you're making your way to campus, or you come to campus this April for one of our 2 programs. We also have our Facebook page for the class of 2020, so please go ahead and request to join. You can connect not only with your future potential classmates, but also current students who will be taking all of your questions there. And then a great resource for you is, of course, our admitted students website. So certainly log in there. There's a lot of good resources and information for you to take note as you continue and consider Princeton, and maybe you've already chosen Princeton, which is very exciting, but go Princeton 2020. And can I get one final goodbye from all of you, a final wave? Bye!
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.